Welcome to the Weekly Wars podcast, where two guys who talk about Star Wars way too much have decided to record it and let you listen. Be sure to check every Wednesday to get the latest episode. And now to Zach and Rhett.
Welcome to Weekly Wars, your weekly dose of all things Star Wars.
I'm Zach.
And I'm Rhett.
But Rhett is dumb.
That hurts my feels.
Wow.
So, we have decided to make this episode our first in a series of reviewing Star Wars fan films.
So we're going to have our ongoing lightsaber review series, so you can expect part 2 of that sometime in the next few weeks. But we're also going to be doing fan film reviews for Star Wars.
Basically, I watch a lot of these fan films. I spend many hours on YouTube looking at Star Wars stuff, whether it's just choreography based, or if it's actually people trying to make the story-based Star Wars fan film.
Or just guys in their normal clothes fighting with lightsabers in a parking lot.
Yeah, I watch it all. So I figured we might as well go through and bring to everyone's attention some fan films that are actually of note, or we'll even do a couple where we talk about ones that just drive me crazy, because there are quite a few of those. And I would like to rant about them. It sounds like fun.
So we have a pretty good starting choice here. We have the winner from the 2015 Star Wars Fan Film Awards. And I actually think it's really cool that Star Wars does a fan film contest. And
from the last couple of years, it's nice that they've really opened that up. They're making it a lot less restrictive than other companies are about their fan films, or even as restrictive as Star Wars has been in the past.
Yeah, in fact, I was really worried when Disney took over that they were going to drop the hammer on the fan film contest.
Yeah, Lucas was pretty bad, but Disney, thankfully, was better, or is better.
And they're going to, so they're opening up the contest. 2016, they're still doing it. And yeah, it's good times. The winner from last year is a film called The Lesser Evil.
So we thought this would be a good one to open up this series on, just because it's pretty readily available on YouTube or on the Star Wars website. There's a difference between the two versions, but it's readily available. It's fairly easy to watch. It's not as hard on the eyes as some of the fan films that I've watched over the last couple of years.
No, it's not bad. So if you want to go check it out before checking out the review, pause now and do a Google search. And also, or you can go on StarWars.com or search for the Star Wars 2015 Fan Film Awards. And this was the overall winner.
Yes, the contest winner for everything.
Everything. They have different categories. Okay, pause it if you need to. Okay, that's enough. They probably paused it. Now we're back. So I am going to critique this film on some things that are probably a little unfair for it. but I'm going to point out that it's not necessarily the filmmaker's fault, but it's hard to determine because there is some rules and restrictions for the Star Wars fan films.
Right. They have quite an extensive rules list. And if any of the rules from last year are similar to this year, they even have restrictions on what type of sound and music you can use within the body of the film.
Right, like they provide some Star Wars sounds for you and music, and that's the only thing you can use. I looked at this year's restrictions, and you are not allowed to use anything else sound or music-wise. And by sound, I don't mean dialogue. You can record your own dialogue. It's more like sound effects, like blasters or spaceships, things like that.
Right. So basically, they're not looking for the next Ben Burt.
Kenobi?
No. Ben Burt.
Ben Burt.
Okay.
The
The sound designer. The original sound designer.
No, they aren't. I wonder if it's some IP issue. I really don't know, because it should be on the responsibility of the filmmakers to make sure everything they use is legal. But maybe they just want to ensure that, so that they feel liability or potential liability. I really don't know.
Yeah, that's probably a chunk of it, at least.
Sorry, we're filmmakers, so we actually have to deal with legal issues sometimes, and we go through all those checklists and things like that. So.
Right. It's a very common problem whenever you have a video.
IP is a huge issue. Intellectual property is massive. But the other thing they have is a time limit. You have to be 5 minutes or less.
Yep.
And if you're 1 second over 5 minutes, you're instantly disqualified.
And that's where the difference comes in between the version of the fan film available on the Star Wars website and the one that they put up on YouTube. The one for the Star Wars website is exactly 5 minutes, whereas the YouTube version has an opening crawl and a full set of credits at the end. So it's just a little bit longer, which is kind of funny. Or sorry, 1 minute and 19 seconds longer, exactly. So it's one of those restrictions that's pretty difficult to work with. There's
trying to set something up in 5 minutes is really difficult.
Well, and a fairly common staple of these live action fan films, because some of the other fan films are animated, and the comedic ones kind of go and do their own thing. But with this live action one, people almost always want to include a lightsaber fight. And if you want anything decent, then that means you're going to have to allocate a couple of minutes to some sort of choreograph.
Right. And a fight can take a significant amount of time. Yeah.
So that can greatly cut down on what you're able to turn in.
Hold on. I think I got a little quiet there. There we go. Yeah, so this fan film, it's pretty good. I'm going to honestly say it's pretty good, but I'm kind of surprised that it won. I almost wonder if it was just good enough in all categories that it became the winner, as opposed to the best in any particular category.
I think that's mainly what it is. As far as I've seen from the other films that won in their respective categories, this one is a little bit above average in most respects. And so I think that was the biggest thing that pushed it to overall winner of the contest.
That's my guess. And there's really no basis behind that other than just kind of looking at it, everything's kind of okay. It's just not amazing. It wasn't particularly shocking. There are a couple things like right from the beginning when we pulled this up again, because we watched it and we've talked about it, and then we're like, okay, let's do our review. We pulled it up again and looked at the title, and we're all like, what does that have to do with anything?
Right. The lesser evil doesn't seem to imply anything about the film itself.
Right.
I mean, it's I don't know who the lesser evil is. They have the greater evil of the Sith Lord that they're hunting down, but there's no one else that's a lesser evil than that.
Maybe they're talking about the bounty hunter versus the Sith.
Yeah, well,
they're saying that it's okay to join with the bounty hunter, but because he's a lesser evil than the Sith. But that doesn't seem to be the basis of the plot.
Yeah, it's definitely
the
not.
short
Well,
film.
When you say the lesser evil, that kind of denotes a sense of you have to make a choice. One's the greater evil, one's the lesser evil. There's no choice.
There's no choice here.
Made here.
Yeah, the master's already made his choice. So
I don't know.
It's
just kind of it's an evocative title that brings nothing to the film or doesn't tell you anything about the film.
It doesn't actually really pay off in a way. In fact, the twist at the end of the film, it has nothing to do with that either.
Right. I mean, yeah, they could have named
the twist, quote unquote. You guys can't see me doing the quotes.
Air quotes.
Air quotes.
Yeah. So it's like, obviously the words legacy and whatnot are used extensively when talking about certain aspects of Star Wars. Because they even have another longer fan film on YouTube that's called The Legacy of the Force. That was actually, they did a premiere in theaters last year with. So Legacy would have been more apt for the reveal of the Skywalker at the end, but they just didn't want to use it. So they're like, what else are we going to say? I don't know. That's kind of what it feels like. Like there's no reason to have picked it as far as I can see. I would love to see if they had a reason for it, like what the creator's intent was behind it, but it's not immediately apparent to me.
Yeah.
But that's okay. Titles are hard.
I did like the people that they picked for the roles. The Master seems grown up. He seems mature.
A significant improvement over a vast number of Star Wars fan films that mostly involve teenage boys. So to have a variety of an old man and
a younger petite girl,
right.
That's just sort of, there's a size difference as well as a apparent maturity difference. So visually he appears to be a little more imposing, a little more aged, whereas she's young and learning, so to say.
Yeah, and I think too, as far as I guess the makeup aspect of it, they look like they could be in Star Wars. You know, their hair is of a fashion, and the beard that he has, it's like, yeah, that works. It's not egregiously weird or
what always kills me, which we've talked about, is when you watch, which we've watched a lot of really low budget films, but you watch a fantasy film and they have like a buzz cut, and you're all like, and like not like a close buzz cut, it's like the
semi-close. It's like they went and got a 1 or a 2.
Yeah, they went and got a haircut at their local haircut person, and you're all like, how would you have a razor like that in medieval times? Like you're like clean shaven or perfectly rugged. Like, doesn't make a heck of a lot of sense.
Right. And so to have something that and I think the only reason that applies to Star Wars is the aspect of space fantasy and space wizards doing stuff. Like you don't I don't know. You don't think about those characters going and getting haircuts. So when you see someone with a super clean haircut, you just can throw you.
It can take you off, and take you out. There's some that can pull it off, and it sort of depends. It depends on what they're doing. Yeah, the character. Like Anakin's hair is shorter in Episode 2, but he has the little Padawan thing, so that implies that there is a process, or like there's a particular hair scenario they have set up for them. But then if you look at most characters, their hair is long or it's a little unkempt. They have a big beard or a scraggly beard. Just makes total sense in a type of fantasy setting that.
Yeah, it's that one little bit of difference that makeup can make between something looking out of place and something looking in place. And when it comes to fantasy, whether space science fantasy or medieval fantasy, having less clean-cut hair can really help out with that.
That said, the blue guy looks a little funky.
Yeah, I think the makeup is mostly okay.
It's not terrible, especially for obviously a no-budget fan film.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. It's good enough for that. The context or the contacts, his eye color changing contacts, they add a certain spooky element. It is one of those, like, is that just the color of the species? Like he's like, I don't know, an Umbaran, the shadow people. Is he one of those, or is he something else that we don't know? If he is, like, I don't know. Or if he's not, are those tattoos? And if those are tattoos, why didn't he get Sith tattoos? If you want like a visual representation of a Darth Lord, Sith tattoos would have been, or even just changing the blue to red, like that is an instant visual indicator of what they're going for.
Yeah, they may have been trying to be original, and that's fine. I'm not like totally opposed to that. But I don't know. It was okay.
Yeah, it's not the greatest, just because it's obviously not as striking as Asajj Ventress or Darth Maul or Savage Press or anything like that. But
Yeah.
it's not terrible either. It's not as bad as even some of the background characters in Star Wars, like Episode 1. Some of those guys are pretty terrible looking.
Or even going back to the prequels, some of those characters you're looking at and you're all like, oh gosh.
That's exactly what I just said.
I thought you were talking about 1, 2, and 3.
I said Episode 1.
Oh, no, I'm talking about like Episode 4, 5, and 6.
Oh, you said prequels.
Oh, sorry.
Okay,
In
we're
the
on the same
original
page
trilogy. Yeah. Well, even Episode 1, there were a few where you're just like, ugh. But it almost adds to the charm of Star Wars, so I don't know.
Yeah,
I have
you
mixed
got
feelings about
people
that.
that look weird. I mean, that's real life, right?
That's real life. I mean, I hang out with Rhett. He looks like a weirdo, so.
Totally. So yeah, the makeup is fine. For what they were doing, it's probably the best that it could be. If they had done a little more art design or kind of workshopped some I don't know, pre-production concept art a little more, then they probably could have figured out another design that could have been really cool. But you can't really do that with a fan film. You don't have that kind of time or budget or talent even.
That's why I put out my little note earlier that we're going to be a little unfair, but we're going to try and note when we're being a little unfair. We're just being honest. Like, they did a good job for what it was, but
yeah,
it can be better, and there's ways to make it better.
Yeah,
but.
And just visually as well, the fact that he's blue and black, or black with a little bit of blue, and then has a red lightsaber is kind of a visual disconnect, right?
Yeah.
And I think they could have alleviated a little bit of that if they had done something like a purple or an orange lightsaber. Although that wouldn't have made, if they did purple, that's not as obviously a Sith Lord.
Yeah, I guess it depends, because in Knights of the Old Republic and the Old Republic MMO, like, it's all Sith. Purple lightsabers are Sith.
Yeah,
sabers.
Purple, orange, red. Anything in that spectrum is considered mostly Sith.
Yeah.
So yeah, from that aspect, I think having a purple lightsaber would have been fine. But in appealing to a larger Star Wars audience, if you gave them purple, that would probably confuse more people than it would have cleared up. I think orange is where the line could have been, because orange and black and orange and blue both work visually together, and it also would have been close enough to red that people would have recognized that he is indeed a bad guy.
Yeah, well, especially when they're fighting him. I mean,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. On writing on the back of the makeup would be the costumes, I think. I think they did a pretty good job with it. With some of the Jedi robes, you can kind of tell the
it was brand new, like they had just bought it or had it shipped in from Amazon.
Right, like you can see threads coming out of the seams and stuff like that, you know. With the bounty hunter Skywalker, I like that they're using normal things to show technology. Like, he has that wrist thing that looks like a shin guard, I guess. Like,
right.
That's what I was thinking of. It's like wearing a shin guard on his arm, but he uses it as his wrist computer. I think that's pretty fun.
And that's very Star Wars-y too. Like, they do that. Super Star Wars.
You know, lightsabers are flash components of a flash from a camera, so it's fine. And I did like that, but you can kind of tell it's just one of those things, like with costumes, if you want to make them looked in or lived in, you got to dirty them up. In fact, they have stuff specifically for that. Oh my gosh, and now I can't remember what it's called. Well, but even as simple as like throwing on the costume, rolling around in the dirt, washing it, you know, like beating it down a bit can kind of
make it lived in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And cutting away any threads, because if you're wearing your clothes and you see a thread, you'll probably cut it off at some point. So
yeah, they have this dust that you can just like put into a sock and beat things with, and
I see where
it dusts it all up, or makes it charred. Like, you can do this the black dust, and so like
I remember.
That's right.
Yeah, so that kind of stuff can just make everything feel more real, and that is one of the best things that they did with Star Wars, especially specifically the original trilogy, and what made the prequel trilogy seem out of place. The original trilogy, everything is
dirty,
lived in,
and
worn
old,
down, beat up. Down. I mean, and he flies a hunk of junk.
It's funny because the prequels were meant to be a grander age or a lighter age, but it was almost like it went too far to the point where it's like, no, this just seems fake. It's totally absolutely fake.
Well, and yeah, especially considering the lore, like even if it is a grander age, it's still been around for 10,000 years.
Thousands of years, yeah. Forever.
So you do need a little bit of age. And the same with this. I mean, the timeline of the fan film is a little ambiguous. I am guessing that it is before the Rusan reformations
You're such a
certain extent. Well, yeah, but that's also kind of a what's the word I'm looking for? I totally blanked. That's not a completely accurate point of reference anymore because they haven't fully canonized the Rusan reformations again.
Well, so that's a question too. Canon, like this technically could be leading into Legacy of the Force.
Yeah, well, and it has to be from a time where the Sith are pretty well known, because if you're going with anything leading up to the prequel trilogies in the past couple hundred years, then it can't be. He can't be a well-known, or the Sith can't be a well-known thing, because at that point they were completely in hiding, right? No one thought the Sith were a thing until Darth Maul, and after that the Sith are destroyed. So it either has to be, if you're talking legends, it has to be after the rise of the Sith again, the new Sith under Darth Krayt, or it has to be before Rusan reformations when the Brotherhood of the Sith are still active. So it's kind of a weird timeline. And with the introduction of the Skywalker, that's another thing. Like, are you supposed to be impressed because he's descended from Luke? Or are you supposed to be impressed because he's Shmi's
father,
super 7 times
or great grandfather? Yeah.
77 great grandfather or something. Like, and even then, I mean, Shmi, like, you have no idea what her legacy is, or if she was even Force sensitive, or if if Darth Plagueis is the only reason Anakin was Force sensitive. Like,
yeah.
So it's kind of a weird thing. Like, it's a name drop that doesn't really mean anything.
Yeah, it didn't really pay off. I did think the visual effects were fine. They just did lightsabers and blasters, and
the opening shot is fairly solid. Right. I think
that's right. They do have the space shot, the landing of the ship, and that is actually pretty good. I
think the shot of the planet might be a little excessive, just because they threw in a whole bunch of like space rocks for, like asteroids and stuff for whatever reason. Like, you don't have it's one of those, like, it probably could have been totally fine if all they had was the planet and the ship going towards the planet. Like, you don't need asteroids floating around. But
it was good. What I think is funny about that, though, is that sort of mimics the shot of the fan film a long time ago. I can't remember what it's called now, but where the Emperor has the two Sith apprentices fight each other.
Yeah.
It has kind of a similar shot, the ship coming down and landing. And episode 2 starts that way. So maybe they're trying to mimic it, and that's fine.
I think that's... Well, yeah. I don't have a problem with the ship going to the planet. I just think... for their sake, they didn't need to throw in a whole bunch of asteroids. It would have saved them a lot of time if they had just left those out. So, but that's on them, I guess.
Everyone goes too far. Even in episode 3, they went too far with Mustafar. Too far.
Absolutely.
You can even see all the work they did on Mustafar because of the fog they added in at the end. It's really sad. Go watch that behind the scenes if you haven't. You can see they add the layers of Mustafar, and you're like, oh wow, those details are amazing. And then they add the fog and the steam from the volcano, and you can't see it anymore.
Oh, so sad.
It happens.
So yeah, the visual effects I think they did fine with, and even the more complicated things beyond the lightsaber and the blaster is okay. It's workable.
Yeah, they did it. That's fine. The actors had an accent. That's a must in fantasy films.
Yeah, and even even so much like not. You don't have to have everyone with a British accent or something like that, but just as simple as giving a slight affectation to your voice or to the actor's voice can make a pretty big difference in that suspension of disbelief.
And the actors seem to take the content seriously, and so they sound believable in this world.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a huge thing that you see with actors in fantasy. Like, they just deliver the lines as if they're
walking down the street.
They're walking down the street.
Shooting the breeze.
Yeah, shooting the breeze, modern America. And they don't do that. They take the content seriously. They have accents, whether they're real or not. I'm guessing they're real. And they do a good job. I thought, especially with some of the terrible movies I've seen, they actually did a really good job.
Yeah, they did better than some of the full feature-length movies that we've seen recently. So it's I think the acting is, well, I guess I would say amazing for what they're going for. Like, it's in terms of other films, it might not be the greatest, but for a Star Wars fan film, it is more than enough. They pull it off with aplomb.
They do good. Looked like they tried to use a lot of natural lighting in the forest because that's the location they had, and the location's fine. Everyone shoots in a forest just because you don't have a lot of options. You're in a Star Wars universe.
Yeah, Star Wars takes place 70% in forests, natural environments anyways. So.
Even The Force Awakens, they spend a lot of time in forests.
Right.
And
even the only artificial set, or the only, I guess, man-made in terms of the universe set is really Starkiller Base. Even Takodana is old and rustic, and Jakku is all beat up in a graveyard. Right. So the only place that they have that's super high tech is Starkiller Base.
Starkiller Base.
So I think that's pretty awesome.
So I think they may have been able to do some things with the lighting. There's a lot of times when I think it's pretty flat, and that always gives it sort of a student film or like corporate video look. Usually that's a big thing.
It's generally like an amateur style, just because they don't have a grip. I think a lot of people assume that they don't need.
Grip,
gaffer.
he means gaffer.
Yeah.
He means the film crew, grip and gaffer people, not they didn't have a grip on how to light,
Yes, good point. But yeah, because everyone assumes they need a gaffer for indoor stuff, but they forget that sometimes you need one for outdoor stuff, or at least like talk to someone who knows how to gaff, because when you're outdoors, you can use silks and nets and all of that to your advantages. And, with low budgets, it's hard to get a, 20 by 20
No, but I mean,
silk up.
But we've had shoots where we just you can take a cloth and just hold it up as a silk, right? Yeah. And you have a couple people hold it up. You don't need to get everything. You just need to get their face to get that really nice glow on them.
Yeah, or with something like that, you could probably even tie something up between a couple of trees if you took a stepladder out with you. So
yeah, totally.
I mean, a lot of that's the adapting, adapting mindset, I guess. The improvisation. I give up. I'm not going to say that.
Okay. We're moving on. You're done.
Wow.
The other thing I was going to add with that, though, is you can alleviate some of that and add some more contrast by doing a good color pass. And I'm not sure if they did, or if they did, it was probably a very basic color pass. But and this may be personal preference, but I would have liked to have seen it a little more spruced up. added a little more contrast, give it a little more cinematic look, or make it a little grittier.
Maybe they ran out of time because they spent all those hours rendering those rocks.
The meteors.
They're like, we got to get this. This is what makes the whole film.
George Lucas style. The visual effects are what matter.
It's true.
New George Lucas style. That's not old George Lucas style.
Good save.
So I thought it was pretty good. I honestly just give it like a 3 out of 5, and that's sort of a nice 3. Like I felt like it was a 3 on everything. Like they did a good job on everything. I didn't think it was
slightly above average in a lot of respects.
Right. So it's not a 2.5 out of 5. It's like a 3 out of 5, maybe a 3.5 out of 5.
Like a B minus.
Yeah. Like they did a pretty good job overall. Nothing that really stood out to me.
Yeah, I think too the choreography isn't anything super special. They have a slight variation between some of the fighting styles, but nothing noteworthy, really. I mean, it's fairly basic, which is okay. I mean, that's not the worst. You can't really expect a whole lot, I guess.
It's not as bad as Templar Nation. But we won't get into that.
It's also not quite as excessive. I mean, probably for lack of talent, but it's not as excessive as some of the prequel fights. So that's
good too.
Yeah.
For people that were clearly untrained, they did a pretty good job.
Yeah. Absolutely. So yeah, I would say I'd be nice. I'd give it a 4 just because of I think they get at least half a point for effort.
This is on a fan film scale, by the way. Yeah. Out of 5, out of all the fan films that exist. This is how we're scaling it. We're not comparing it to like big movies with huge budgets.
Yeah, that would be unfair. But yeah, for other fan films, this is definitely one of the better that I've seen. And it's like one of the other fan films in the competition, live action one at least, was Revan versus Nihilus. And I think it is a significant improvement over that one, just as a frame of reference. We'll review that one at some point in the future. But if you guys have seen this one and you want to watch Revan versus Nihilus, that'll kind of give you the basis that I'm using. I think this one did a better job with its premise than that one does.
Yeah. So that's our review of The Lesser Evil.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun. Be sure to like us and share the podcast. We want to get this out to as many people as possible. Share.
Share.
And subscribe on YouTube and or your iTunes app or your podcast app on your phone, Android. We are on Podbean, and you can, if you have the Podbean app, you can subscribe through us there, and there's an RSS feed.
Go like our Facebook page. We share everything on there.
Yeah, if you want to talk to us on Facebook, we'll probably talk to you because we're nerds. So
yeah, give us some feedback. Give us something to work on. We're still working on our favorite bounty hunter video that was requested. Favorite bounty hunter podcast that was requested. Yeah, hit us up.
And may the force be ever in your favor.